Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Kawazi Cyber Seminar conference call. My name is Shantala, and I will be your facilitator for today's call. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. We will conduct a question-and-answer session towards the end of this conference. If at any time during the call you require assistance, please press star followed by 0, and an operator will be happy to assist you. As a reminder, this conference is being recorded for replay purposes. I would now like to turn the call over to your host for today's call, Mr. David Christel. Please proceed, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, folks. I'd like to welcome you all to this edition of the Kawazi Cyber Seminar. Before we begin, just a few little items to take care of. One is if you have a problem with technology today, you can send a chat message to host, and I can pick it up. And also, we'd appreciate if there's general comments and feedback. Those can be sent to commanager@kawazi.org. And next week, this presentation will be available online at the Kawazi website next week. And, of course, all previous Kawazi Cyber Seminars are available there now. Also, I'd like to let folks know that we're looking for speakers for next season's Cyber Seminar. So if you're interested in doing one on your own, please let me know, and we'll be glad to schedule you in. A few announcements before we get started. One is I'd like to remind folks that we have the inaugural Kawazi Biennial Science Meeting, July 14th through 16th in Boulder, Colorado. Featured speakers are Wilfred Butchert from Cornell University and Dr. Robert Hirsch from USGS. We're also having with a whole variety of series of invited speakers and sessions. We also have poster sessions where we are looking for contributed papers to be presented as posters associated with each session. Registration is now open, and papers may be submitted through the registration process. Also, we have outstanding the hydrographics competition, which is a competition for visualizations, animations, and short films about hydrology for graduate students. More information about that is available online at the Kawazi website. Today's presentation will be by Dr. Vitek Krajewski from the University of Iowa. His scientific interests concern multiple aspects of rainfall measuring, modeling, forecasting, and estimation using radar and satellite remote sensing. His current research focuses on field experimentation and modeling uncertainty of multi-sensor rainfall estimation at a range of temporal and spatial scales. His other work includes estimation and control of resources and environmental systems. He is a fellow of the American Geophysical Union and the American Meteorological Society, and has served on numerous committees and panels with these and other organizations. Today, Dr. Krajewski will be speaking on HydroNextRad, a community resource for the use of rainfall data. I will now turn the presentation over to Vitek.
Thank you, Dave. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time to join in. And I am very excited to present now to you, to share with you the results of a 4-year project that we are about to complete for you, for the hydrologic research community. So I'm speaking today on behalf of some 20 people that are listed here on this slide, who over the last 4 years contributed in one way or another to this project. As I go, you will get a better idea what this HydroNextRad is all about. But very briefly, it is a prototype application, web-based application that allows researchers or engineers ordering customized radar rainfall products for a variety of applications and studies. All those products are based on NextRad data. Now, why are we doing this? Well, to provide you with access to that resource. And so here a little bit of history. I have been involved with NextRat for some 25 years or so, back to the times when I used to work for the National Weather Service. And then when the system became a reality in mid-90s, over the years, I made this observation that very few papers in the hydrologic literature are based on NextRat data, and in particular, data that can be traced in origin to the highest resolution data, the 1 kilometer, 1 degree data, the so-called level 2 data. And in some sense, I was not surprised because in our own group, it was always a struggle to work with such data, but we did have, the expertise to do this. And about 5 years ago, I came across an announcement, opportunity announcement from the National Science Foundation, which read something to the effect that if you have some research-grade software that has the potential to be useful beyond your own research, we would like to hear from you. Well, I quickly recognized the connection between all the research developments that we have done over the years, and I thought that others could benefit from these developments. And I talked to Anton Kruger, my colleague and partner for many, many years, then talked to Jim Smith at Princeton University, and we decided, quickly that this is an opportunity for us to share with others the fruits of our labor, so to speak. So we developed, the system that protects you, so to speak, from being an expert in weather radar technology, formatting of data, all that, jargon that is intimidating, to some, and that slows down others, those who are brave enough to venture, through it. And to see the level to which we succeeded, well, that remains, to be seen. But today's presentation is kind of a first step in bringing this development to the large audience and the large hydrologic community. So first, just very quickly, the partners. So you can see that it is mainly the University of Iowa and Princeton University, with important participation by the National Climatic Data Center and UCAR's Unidata Program Center. So those are the four partners in this project. Each one is essential, but each one has a different level of responsibility, and here you can quickly, see who does what. And again, some of these terms will become more obvious as we go through the presentation and then later on in the discussion. So first, just a broad view of the architecture of this program. One can say, wait a second, it is the government that operates the NextRat, system, and, for sure they've done, everything to share the wealth of information collected by this very expensive, network of weather radars with the larger community. And, the answer is, yes and no. But rather than going, into, the history here, all I will say is that our ambition is to make this even better. So here in the system that we call HydroNextRat, we are receiving, data over the internet, of course, provided in real time by Unidata from many radars, as many as we would like to get. But for the historical data, we go to the national archives that are housed at NCDC. So So that's how we built our database. Now, this database is complemented by a very rich metadata that we calculate as we process the incoming, data. And this metadata serves to help you to find what you want. Now, even just this processing going from the basic data to the calculated metadata is pretty intensive. So we have a number of compute engines, compute servers that do the job. But they also do other things, as you will see soon. So here let's take a more detailed look at the insights of Hadron XRAD. So you can see, maybe I should at this point grab, let's see, the pointer here. I apologize for okay, here it goes. So the laser pointer here. So again, we get the incoming, basic data, the level 2 data that I mentioned, before. We subject them to extensive processing that includes some quality control on the level of data self-consistency, so that what's in the name agrees with what's inside, and many other things. We calculate metadata. We organize all this information into a large relational database. And we have also developed a number of algorithms that then we can apply to all those data and metadata to create customized products that the National Weather Service and other government agencies that operate the XRAD network do not provide. So one could go to the level 2 data and calculate whatever one wants if one has the expertise to do so. Here we provide a tool that makes this task much, much easier for you. Well, to make use of all this, again, we use the internet, and we have developed a user-friendly graphical user interface that you can use to order what you want. And later on in the talk, I will demonstrate through a live demonstration the use of this graphical user interface. Once users get the products that they think they need, well, they can apply them to a variety of hydrologic applications, some of which I could probably mention, and many of which I probably have no idea that it was possible. So once you have rainfall data, which is, of course, rainfall being a major driving, force for many hydrologic processes, then, the sky is the limit, so to speak. So let me then go further. So this is the basic, architecture of the system. And now I'm showing you the coverage of the data. The project being sponsored by the National Science Foundation, the key there, they don't sponsor operational project. They sponsor a project that has some intellectual merit. And so they thought that, yes, there was enough of an intellectual merit, there to warrant spending, money to develop this prototype. I like to think of this prototype as a system that ultimately the government will make available for everybody to use. But I think we are 3 years away from that. So you see here the nominal coverage of 230 kilometers from each radar for the radars that we collect the data from in our Hadron XRAD. The red dots are those radars for which we have a full record of data, and the other radars with smaller centers are are those for which we have at least 5 years of data. Again, these are the basic data, the highest resolution available data from which you can then build a variety of products at different temporal and spatial resolution. So that's the geographic coverage. The selection here was somewhat, arbitrary, but also it was based on some input from user community. So now, all these radars, they cover a number of hydrologic units. So here I'm showing you a mosaic of basins that are subject to USGS organization, the so-called hydrologic units described by codes. These codes range from 2 digits all the way to, I think, 14 or 16. And the more digits, the smaller the basin. So here in our organization, we go all the way down to 8-digit hydrologic units. And the way this is relevant is because this whole system, HydroNetSat, is hydrologically centric, or we call it, basin centric, as opposed to being radar centric, as is the case, for example, if you go to the National Archives. Data come from individual radars, and they are stored, that way. And also because many meteorological phenomena are on scales that are perhaps larger than some of the basins that we're talking about here. So quite often the atmospheric science studies are also radar-centric, but I think that it is mainly because that's how the data flow and archiving was organized. And we thought that it's time to change this. So now, so that's one basic feature of our system. Another one is that we calculate many metadata, and the metadata here is not merely the location and the height of the tower and the date of some file. It is much more than that. The metadata are descriptions of data that have physical meaning. So, and again, are basin-centric. So we calculate metadata for all those basins that I was showing you that we cover. We also, and we do this every 10 minutes. So every 10 minutes there is a number of, a set of numbers that have physical meaning, hydrologically physical meaning, that characterize rainfall that happens over that basin. And all this is so that, as I will demonstrate soon, you can find the information that you need faster. We also calculate metadata for radars and also for some selected range locations. The system allows choosing grid resolution and projection. So again, that's a big change from the operational government land system. The choice of product, in particular the space and time scales, and also how the products are calculated. So there is a certain level of flexibility in selecting algorithms. And again, some of these algorithms, as you will see, you don't have to be an expert in them. You can select from a set of predefined algorithms, or if you are an expert, then you have some level of flexibility of designing your own algorithm. The whole system is designed in a modular way, so if it becomes popular, we can easily expand it. And it has a nice graphical user interface, very user-friendly. And those are just the main features. There are some other aspects that will become apparent as we go. think that a system like this is nice to have by the community? Those are some of the reasons. I will here focus perhaps on this one. Suppose that two people do a study and one wants to check the results of the other, for example, to repeat the results. If both get data from the system and specify exactly the same set of parameters, they will get exactly the same, products. But they don't have to store those products. They can go back to the system and repeat those, studies. So this goes towards increasing the science credibility, because if, as you all know, the complexity there at the computational level and data manipulation level, is such that it is impossible to mention, all the things that you do to data in the papers that you publish in journals, and therefore there are many unanswered questions that one can, pose, and that may prevent one from answering the many puzzles that we face in our research. The system is pretty fast. This is a rough, estimate, but you can process, 1 year of data in 1 day, maybe 2 days, something on that order. The system is very easy to use, and we hope that when more people learn about it, there will be more demand than the interest in today's presentation would indicate. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to leave the PowerPoint presentation and I will go to my desktop that I will share with you. And on my desktop, I have a browser, ready to go. And I will take you through a quick tour of Hydra-NetStat interface. It will not be an exhaustive tour, so because there are many different possibilities how one can move around, but you will get a quick idea how the graphical user interface is organized and how that whole system is structured. So I'm going to quit here and go to share your desktop icon, and now you should see just a green screen, which is my desktop. I will now go to the browser. As you can see, the browser has its own domain name, and of course, the name is Hydra-NetStat, and then .net, .org, .com, all those work the same way. Access to the system requires a login. Again, this is not, a restriction, but we really don't need any, hackers playing with our system because we have, limited, resources, and we don't want our, machines to be doing things that they don't need to be doing. So anybody that would like to use the system can just approach us, and we will create access rights, and then off you go. I will talk about that a little bit more later. So here is my account. I enter, and here the first screen allows you to select a mode of operation in search for your domain of interest. Before I go there, I will just say that the whole session will consist of going through the steps that are listed here on the right-hand side. So user has to select domain of interest, which radars cover it, the resolution for the product, the period of data that is of interest, the type of product, the algorithm that would create that product, and the format for the output. And so we will be going sequentially through those steps. So here, when you look for that domain of interest, well, you are either looking at a basin, or you are looking at a radar, or not yet, but soon you will be able to specify an arbitrary lat-long box. So, of course, for us, the most interesting is this pathway, but before I go there, I just want to quickly enter this mode of searching for domain of interest. So this would allow me to select radar of interest. So this is more for people like myself, where we work on development of radar info estimation algorithms, and then we want to work with entire radar data. But I want to go here only so that I can show you some features of the graphical user interface, and then I will exit this mode and go into the basin-based mode. So you can see that this system works with a map server that is running, behind. This is not a GIS, you cannot do any analysis, but having a nice map background, helps you select, data that you need in a geographic context. So I'm just turning on some layers, here, just to make this interface, a little bit more geographically relevant. Now you see the locations of those radars that I was showing you before. If I click at a particular location, you should see the nominal range of that particular radar, but also the data coverage in our archives at annual scale. If I go to, say, the Laramie radar, and I click on this radar, then the coverage here will show me all those directions that are completely unblocked. Now, if you want to have details of that blockage, then one can go, further, in selecting the particular, radar, and pursue your ordering of the data, that way. But here we are showing the coverage this way, only to not mislead, people into thinking that these radars that have nominal coverage, with a full circle, of course, that they can see basins of interest that are, behind, the mountains, and therefore are blocked from the view by these radars. So, of course, in the western United States, there are many such locations, but there are some also in the east. So now, as we were, doing this, here on the right-hand side, you get display of some basic information of these radars. So again, all you need to know is your basic geography of the United States. You don't have to know all that radar, jargon, all these acronyms, and so forth. But I'm going to quit now this mode. I'm going to start over, and this will take me back to that first, screen, and I'm going to pursue this way of selecting my domain of interest. And of course, I know what is my domain of interest. I'm a hydrologist. I know my basins. Hopefully I can move around, this way. I will quickly turn on, the same, layers, not that it's, important, but again, just to have a nicer looking, presentation. So I will just click on one of those Digit 2 hydrologic units. In this case, I decided to click on the Upper Mississippi, basin. I just, clicked. You couldn't really see me clicking, but that you will see the result in a moment. You'll see that the upper Mississippi River Basin is highlighted. I can zoom to what is highlighted. Now I can again go to digit 4 level, and again I already clicked on that basin where the cursor is. It got highlighted. I can go further. You should be able to see that on the right-hand side I'm moving through that hierarchy of USGS basin organization. Sometimes you don't see much difference between digit 4 and digit 6. That's not our fault. That's how these basins are organized. So again, I click to get closer. Again, I'm communicating with the map server as I do this. It should deselect the green. Maybe I try to mark the click again. Let me see. I will zoom out. Hope I don't have any competition right now. But anyway, I don't know exactly what is happening, but since this is a live presentation, something must have happened. I want to call your attention to this basin where I'm moving my cursor, because this basin is partially covered by 2 radars. So I will now confirm my selection of this larger basin here. So now it's complained. So okay, I'm selecting. How about I will clear the selection? Nothing is happening. Okay, let me quickly try again. So the upper Mississippi, zoom. When I zoom in, it deselects because it gives me these options. So I go to this basin again, it got selected. I zoom to this basin to get closer. Again, I select, this basin again. This is this case where there is not that much difference between digit 4 and digit 6. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to select, this one here. Confirm my selection. And now I'm done with one step in the selection process. Now this basin is covered by several radars, and even though if I click on this radar, which is in La Crosse, Wisconsin, this radar covers this basin entirely. This is perhaps not the most interesting case. What I would like to demonstrate to you is the ability of the system to merge data from more than one radar. So the Minneapolis radar does cover this basin, but not entirely, as you can see now. And the Davenport radar in Iowa also covers this basin, but not entirely. So there is some portion of the basin where the 2 radars overlap, and clearly if one wants the data, rainfall data for the basin, one has to combine data from these 2 radars. And so here there is a choice of 2 different methods. One can combine at the product level, basically calculating 2 identical products from data from both radars, or one and then merge those, or one can go to the level 2 data and create virtual radar, so to speak, data set, and then convert that to rainfall. That other mode is not active, right now, so this is my only choice. I confirm, the choice, and now the third step in the selection process is selecting, the grid. And here there are short descriptions of the choices that you have. This HRAP grid is the popular grid that the operational radars use. So the products that are available to you today from the government are on HRAP grid, roughly 4x4 kilometer grid, and you can only get hourly accumulations. Those are your choices. Well, I can show you that grid, here, just so that you have some context. So this is how the overlap of this grid would look like over your basin. However, we can go to much higher resolution than 4 kilometers. We can go to the same projection grid that we called Super HRAP, and if I click, here, the density of the grid will be such that you won't see much, so I'm going to uncheck the show grid, but select this particular grid. So this is roughly 1 kilometer grid. So let's say that this is my decision, this is my selection, I confirm, this, and now I go to select the period of interest. And if you know your dates, then you can clear this calendar, and you can select the entire month of July and August just by clicking at near the names of these months. You can deselect certain days. You can drag your mouse across. You can do a variety of things with the calendar, but this is all if you know what you are looking for, if you know the dates. If you don't know the dates, then you can look at the metadata. So these are the metadata that I was talking about. So we can look at, for example, the total water volume over a day over that basin, and here you have some scale in cubic meters, but those numbers are large, and it takes a while to interpret them. So we can go to some other quantities, for example, maximum over a day coverage of this basin by convective activity. And here you have your color-coded calendar, so you can see that on those days marked in dark blue, much more of the basin was covered by strong convective activity. Again, there is a definition, a mathematical definition behind each of these metadata type. I don't want to go through them all, here. That's not the purpose, but you can see that this is helpful information. So these values are calculated in a rough way over each of these basins that we support. Let's say that for whatever reason I decided to select August 19th, so you can see that this day is selected here, and that this is my choice. So I confirm this selection, and I'm done now with location and period and grid. And now the next step is, what is that I want? And so, for example, if I want 15-minute rainfall totals, this little schematic, helps you to show that these are 15-minute accumulations built in a certain way. You see that the clock that we use, the time units are in universal time. If you go to hourly totals, if that's what you you want hourly data, well, again, that just, quickly shows you that those are, the choices. You can require, you can request, rainfall, maps, just by converting, obtained by converting radar reflectivity into rainfall rate. But quite often, many hydrologists that do rainfall runoff modeling for small basins will select this 15-minute rainfall accumulation. Again, something that is not available from the government. Again, just as a reminder, the resolution of our product in space is 1 kilometer. So these are the fields that we would be getting for the entire day that we selected. So I confirm this selection, and then the next step is deciding on the algorithm, how I want this product to be calculated. Again, unfortunately, or not, there is no one way of converting radar reflectivity to rainfall rate, and there is a considerable uncertainty associated with such conversion, no matter which way you do it. So here are three predefined choices that you have. The first one is what we call pseudo National Weather Service precipitation processing system. The name pseudo to justify it. The reason for this is that the National Weather Service, believe it or not, they do not have a standalone code for their own system that is labeled PTS, Precipitation Processing System. That's the name that they use. So in the absence of such code, we wanted to recreate it. We could not fully reproduce the products that they produce. We are very close, within about 5%, but we cannot get it exactly. And people who wrote those codes are gone from the Weather Service, so it's kind of a tough situation. But we still decided to include this algorithm because, again, this is the closest to what you would get from those official products, and again, 5%, difference is not that high, in this, business. There are other choices, one that we call quick look. Obviously, this is a quick algorithm, doesn't have all the, bells and whistles. If you want those, then you can go to what we call high fidelity algorithm, and it has all sorts of, corrections. But again, you don't have to worry about what those are. You kind of trust our judgment and expertise. Those are predefined algorithms. If you want to do something on your own, well, you can. So here you can go deeper into the algorithms. You can select different options, including, ZR relationship. You can work with, different antenna elevation, angles. You can select different copy height. Copy is constant altitude plan position indicator. Again, that's a radar jargon that you don't have to be familiar, with. So you can select some parameters there. You can apply or not apply certain, corrections here. Vertical profile of reflectivity, range correction, advection correction, which is not even included in the TPS. So you can do a number of things, and of course you can produce a product with different sets of these options and compare them. Again, if you care. So once you make your choices, whether these are predefined algorithms or this customized algorithm, you confirm your selection, and then the last question that you will need to answer is that of the format. So you will be getting digital maps that will have the physical meaning of 15-minute rainfall accumulations at 1 kilometer grid in a certain map projection, and now how do you want those to be packaged? Well, a popular, choice is this ASCII, because the header structure, here is such that you can quickly import, those into ArcMap or ArcView. But there are other choices available here. NetCDF right now is not available because it turns out that Esri has an error in the map projection that supports this HRAP, grid. We found it out, communicated it to them. They will correct it in the next release of the software. So that's your last, choice. You confirm. This is a summary of your job parameters. If you like those, if that's what you really wanted to do, then you click, the button, here, and that submits the job to our, compute, servers, and the processing, has started. So here, rather than waiting, for these products, which, for one day really doesn't take very long to calculate, I will go back to the PowerPoint, presentation, and go back to show you the result there. Well,
You check present document.
present document.
Oh, click on the Hydro N tab up top.
Okay, so present document, and then,
Yep, tab up top that says Tversky Hydro N. There should be a black tab up.
yeah, I'm clicking, but nothing happens.
Yeah, let me see if I can get it for you.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so we are back. We are back in the PowerPoint, and so I have
Yours.
I have the control, I have my laser pointer, and I can go further. So, the first step after receiving an email that will tell me that my products are ready, I go to an FTP site, FTP the products to whatever location, and then of course I want to see the product, so I open my ArcMap, and not so pretty interface, and here it is. But to make it look better, I want to show you what one of these radars, the Minneapolis radar, what that would show, and clearly you can see not complete, coverage of our basin of interest. The next, slide shows the equivalent, but from the Davenport radar, and then our merged, product, and that merged product was limited to a Latvian box that confines that basin. So you will not be getting all those data that are well outside of your domain of interest. Your domain of interest is that, I think it's Turkey River, somewhere in northern Iowa, and that's your basin of interest. So you get all the data over the basin plus, a little bit of the context, some info outside of the basin. And now, you can take those data and do whatever analysis you intended to do. So that's enough of the demonstration. I hope you agree that the use of the interface is very simple, very easy. You can only move sequentially. All those things that you have to select are logical. If one wants to use rainfall data, those are all the questions that one would have, to answer. So now, where are we in this project? Well, we archive data from some 40 radars. We are not completely, done. Our servers are working as we speak. we already support some 50 beta users. So here, if you want to become a beta user, just send me an email. Some of the 50 are our own students and people of the team, but we have perhaps half of the external users, people who just heard about this software, contacted me and wanted to start using it. We are still working with NCDC to transfer the missing data. We'll continue calculation of the metadata. Our metadata base is not complete. We developed some real-time versions, even though the latency with the system is not very large. It's on the order of 15 to 30 minutes, because we are getting data in real time from Unidata. But before you would go and order the product, it would take a few more minutes. And of course, right now it involves human operating that interface. So of course automation is possible, and we can actually we've done it so that you could do this from MATLAB, but that's not where the focus is. And we continue working with our data users who report occasional problems. We fix those problems, we discover problems, and we fix them, and so we go. Now, are there limitations? Of course. In addition to those that I already mentioned, these are radar-only rainfall maps. And you may like it or not, but we thought that this is a much more difficult step rather than bringing your language data that hydrologists are very familiar with using, and merging radar and language data is also it's kind of another step. But the main reason why we didn't want to, at this stage, include language data is because the language networks that are out there, and there are hundreds of them, they are operated by different organizations, and the quality varies tremendously, and we just didn't want that quality to reflect on our product. So our quality is internally consistent, you may say, except for the inter-radar calibration differences that we do not take responsibility for. Again, it is the government that operates those radars, and there are differences between them. So in other words, if two radars are looking at exactly the same location, that doesn't mean that there will be high degree of agreement, here. But that's a story for another, talk. Again, unfortunately, we don't have the true precipitation processing algorithm as the government uses. We are close. The network system is getting ready to provide data at much higher resolution, quarter kilometer, and I think quarter degrees, so really high spatial resolution data with 4-minute temporal resolution. This is a recent, development over the last, year or so. There are some operational, tests, there. Our system does not support, this, yet. Also, there is no true real-time capability, even though we have developed some prototypes, and they are supporting some of the waters hydrologic observatories. And the quantification of uncertainty exists only in the form of the papers that we published. So when this is all done, yes, we will have much more data in that prototype database, but the real question that we are facing is what's next, and it is not what is that you can do to the system? How can you enhance? And there is no shortage of ideas, here. It is just that the funding is for the project is coming to an end, and NSF was happy to support it. Now, all the software, is ready, it's there, it works, as you could see. However, it still requires system administrators and others, to support it. And also it requires computers where all these computations are taking place. So exactly where that will happen, where that should happen, it's not, that clear. Here I outline 3 major modes for use of the system. So again, the prototype is our system housed at Iowa, and our archives are here, but they are limited in space and in time. But the full capability of the system is here. If you want to go to NCDC, where you will not have the benefits of the metadata, we are working with them to implement this, but because they have, so much more, data, it will take considerable time before they have the same metadata search capabilities that we have in our prototype system. For real time, we have a prototype, we have a solution that involves Unidata, and it's just a matter of, time and money, of course, to implement it, again, for the benefit of the community. So there is a lot of, know-how that we developed over these last, 4 years. There are many directions in which we could eliminate many of those limitations that I was just discussing, but it needs support from the community, and I hope that support will be there, and that the only way for the support to be there is if you try the system, if you decide that it's good for you, that it serves your needs. If it doesn't, well, then I know for sure that it supports my needs, so that's like the worst option. That is not so bad. So with this, I will stop. Again, I will thank you all for joining. If you have more questions or would like to become a beta user, just drop me an email. So with this, I will turn it over back to Dave.
Great, thank you, Vitek. So we now have the ability to take questions from the audience. If you can submit questions both using the chat mode over the screen to the lower right of your WebEx window, or we can also take telephone calls over the phone. And you can get a question in by dialing #0 to have the operator place you in queue.
Pardon the interruption. This is the operator. They would need to press *1.
Oh, excuse me, *1?
Yes, sir.
Okay, *1. Sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, if you would like to ask a question, please press *1 on your touch-tone telephone. If your question has been answered or you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, please press *2. Questions will be taken in the order received. Please press *1 at this time to begin.
Are there any questions come from the audience? Simply?
There are no audio questions at this time.
Okay, I have a question from Jeff Weber. He says, I noticed pink dates on the calendar. What do they indicate?
This indicates no data in our database, and many of those will disappear once the database is complete. We try to match, in terms of data availability, we try to match what is in the National Archives at NCDC. However, by law, they are obliged to take everything that comes from those areas. Some of those files are corrupt, things, happen, as we all know. and we have an extensive, procedure to try to rescue, those. But if we cannot assure that there is self-consistency within such data, then we just don't include those files in further, processing. So probably at the end of the day, we will have slightly fewer files than what is in the National Archives. But that's our goal for those radars and for that period of 5 to 7 years and full record for other radars to have exactly what they have.
Okay. Vitek, I have a question from earlier in the presentation from, I apologize for the pronunciation of the name, from Hamzi Shi, and they ask, is there an option to compare the level 3 RRG rainfall volume to newly processed level 2 values?
No. That's the answer.
Okay. Are there any questions over the phone, Shantaway?
No, sir, there are not.
Okay. John Selker asks, what fraction of the total number of rainfalls have you included? It appears that the West Coast has limited data coverage so far.
Well, yes, that is correct. Again, the choice of those radars that we have included was, somewhat arbitrary. The proposed budget was cut in half right at the beginning of the project. We wanted to include entire, country for some limited period of, 5 years or so. That just couldn't, happen. So we wanted to represent different terrains and different, regimes, and but it is, true that we were a little bit, selfish. We selected those radars where Jim Smith is doing research. We selected those radars where I do research. And so we covered the middle of the country pretty well.
Okay. John Selker has another question. It is, I have heard that Florida has NextRad interacting with rain gauge real-time data for the state. Any comments on this approach?
Well, I would prefer to not speak on behalf of, Florida. And I think I know what's going on, there. I think that what John mentioned is a little bit of an overstatement. But the best answer that I can give here is no comment.
Shantaway, are there any questions over the phone?
No, sir.
Okay. A question from Montana Tech. If I ordered data which involves 4 radar stations, the final product I ordered will be the average of the 4 stations? No. Okay. Mathematically speaking, it would be a weighted, average, but the weighing is based on the distance, from the radar, but most importantly, it is based on the radar rainfall uncertainty, model that we have developed. So this uncertainty depends on the distance from the radar, rainfall, quantity, season, and those are just the main, characteristics. And again, that merging, scheme takes all these factors into consideration. So, strictly speaking, mathematically, well, yes, but it's not a simple average. Are there any phone questions, Shantaway?
No, sir, there are no questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Janet Barco asks, I am working with the Los Angeles radar data. Data is available from 2005. Is data before 2005 going to be included in Hydro NextRad?
Well, yes, because the program minimum is to have at least 5 years of data for each radar. We hope to go to about 2001 or so. I can't remember exactly, the date, but there was a point where the project called CRAFT got implemented, and CRAFT was a project through which data started flowing through Unidata and also through Internet all the way to the National Archives. So that really increased the availability of NextRad data, because prior to that, data were transmitted to NCDC on tapes, and many of these tapes went bad and data were lost. So after they started using the Internet, the percentage of data available greatly increased. So we would like to have minimum 5 years, but hopefully go to that beginning of that CRAFT, project, which is about 7-8 years. Now we have already transferred probably almost all the data that we need from NCDC, some terabytes of data, and we are now ingesting them into our system, subjecting them to all this, processing, quality control, source consistency, calculation of metadata, and so forth. So over time, you should see increase in the size of the data set for this particular radar.
Okay. I have a question on the chat from Yang Liu from NCSA, and they asked, will you consider making your source code open source and a collaborative development with other organizations such as NCSA so that we can move quickly to provide community service?
Well, we really didn't discuss this within, the team. The short answer would be no, that for the time being, no, there are no such plans. We think that would require, a little bit of reorganization of the system, because, connecting to the system, to our compute servers and to our database, code that could be modified externally is kind of, another level of effort, here, and so far we have not given much thought to that.
Okay. I think I have let's see, a follow-up question from Montana Tech. It says, this is an interesting system for data ordering. You said it will be available this summer. Which months will be most possible? If the data is ready for ordering, is the website the same as you just showed? Thank you.
Yes, it will be exactly what I was showing. So again, the system already exists and it works and it operates, and I said that we will open it up during the summer, just because until we do, any kind of hiccups and errors and imperfections we can ask to be excused. But when we make the system official, then our the room for excuses will be much less. Even though there are some counterexamples, like Microsoft, for example, but we don't want to follow the suit.
Okay, there's a question on the chat from Kunal Patel, and he asks, is 1 kilometer grids more accurate than 4 kilometer grids, or is interpolation from 4 kilometer grids?
So the basic data has higher resolution than 1 kilometer, but the resolution really depends on the distance, from the radar. So just to give you an idea, 1 degree azimuthal resolution translates to about 1.5 kilometer resolution at the distance of 100 kilometers from the radar and about 3 kilometers at 200 kilometers from the radar. Now, in range, you have this constant 1 kilometer, resolution. So, and of course, all this is some sort of interpolation from the basic polar data that radars, collect to any of these grid resolutions or projections. So there is interpolation, all over. But to obtain 1 kilometer resolution, we do not simply cut the 4 kilometer resolution into 16, sections. So we start again from level to data, which is highest resolution, 1 degree by 1 kilometer. And also we have vertical information just to make things even more fun.
Okay. Shantali, are there any questions on the phone?
There are no audio questions at this time.
Okay. I have another question from John Selker, and he asks, have you run validation against known high-quality rain gauges? What is the approximate precision, or is it impossible to state in a global sense?
Well, yeah, very good question. We are performing intensive and extensive evaluations of all these different, products at different resolutions, different algorithm options, and so forth, against high-quality rain gauge data. PhD student Gabriele Villarini is finishing a PhD dissertation that will include some of those. We just published, a paper in Journal of Hydrometeorology where we developed an uncertainty model for 1 hour 4x4 kilometer TPS type product, and we have conducted many more investigations after that, and the conclusion is that it will not be that different from what is published there. The answer again, depends on the distance from the radar, the season, the amount, of rainfall, and so forth. So there is no one short, answer. But I can say that, yes, for these hourly accumulations, the random component of the overall error could be as high as, 40%, 40-50%. Whether it's good enough or not, that depends on the application. Also, we are looking now at the scaling properties of the errors and how errors vary across space and time scales. So that's an active area of research, and of course, Hydrometeorology is at the center of this because it gives us ability to do this kind of analysis, quickly and efficiently.
Okay, Shantali, are there any other audio questions?
No, sir.
Okay, any further questions that people want to ask over chat? Great. Vitek, thank you very much for your presentation today. We appreciate you taking the time out to share your research with us. Folks who dialed in, thank you all for taking time out of your Friday afternoon. So I'd just like to remind you about some upcoming Kawasi activities, the Biennial Science Meeting in Boulder during July, and that can be, information about that is available on the website, Kawasi website. Also, once again, yet another reminder about hydrographics for you graduate students interested in putting together visualization short films or animations about your research projects. Let's see. So I think that's about it. So thank you all very much for joining us today, and I think we're going to call it quits. Thank you.
Dave?
Yes.
If there is a way to save chat, because I was not able to take a closer look at some of the comments and questions, and maybe I can address some of them, further by email or contacting, people, directly.
Yeah, I will.
Because the print is too small, and from where I was sitting, I couldn't see very well. So I was relying on what you were asking.
Okay. Yes, we save chats all the time.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for your participation in today's conference. This concludes the presentation. You may now disconnect. Good day.